Hello and welcome to our first Dreamweaver website design project. In this series you'll learn how to build a complete website from start to finish using Dreamweaver CS6. You can use your own images and resources for this project, or if you prefer you can download all of the project files shown in these tutorials. You can also get the complete series manual in printed or ebook format along with the high definition video tutorials from wizibooks.com. In our last few lessons, we've created and attached a style sheet to our HTML document. And in this lesson, we're going to be entering some CSS for real. Now, it's always good practice to start off with a level playing field. And there are a whole bunch of browsers out there, and each browser has its own default settings. I'm going to open up the main HTML document, and I'm just going to press F12 to open up our web page in my default browser, which is Google Chrome. Now, the default settings of Google Chrome include a little bit of spacing. So at the top of the screen you can see that the image doesn't quite stretch right up to the top of the screen, and also on the left hand side there's a little bit of white space over here as well. And if I scroll down, you'll see that our text for the H1 and the P tags, there's a little bit of space around these as well. So we've got a bit of white space between our banner image and our first heading, and then a little bit more space between our heading and our paragraph of text. And these are Google's default settings. And the settings that we can see here is the default margin or padding that Google uses. This page may look very different if we used a different browser. So to give us a good start, we need to include something called a reset in our CSS file. So I'm just going to minimize this for a second, but I'm going to come back to it shortly so that we can see the differences that our coding makes. I'll minimize that one now. I've opened my main.html document, and up in the related file lists I can see my style sheet. So I'm just going to click on that to open that one up. Now, a reset will override the browser's default settings, so no matter which browser you use, if we put a reset in here, each of the browsers should display your web page in the same way. So we're going to be using a very simple reset in our style sheet. There's an awful lot of information on the internet about CSS resets, and if you want to, you can go off and research this topic on your own. So let's get started. Those of you who've used computers before may well have heard the term wildcard, and a wildcard is something that we use to find or identify a whole range of items. And the wildcard that we're going to be using here is the asterisk, and what that will do is it will select everything that a browser sees as an element in a web page. So it'll select the H1s, the Ps, all the divs. It will select pretty much everything, and what we're going to do is we're going to reset the default settings for the margins, the padding and the border to 0. So I've entered my wildcard or my asterisk. I'll press tab and I'm going to open a curly bracket. Now if I type space, and the first thing I'll reset is the margin, so I'm going to type in margin and then my separator, the colon, and I'm just going to type 0. Because we want to zero out all of that white space that we saw earlier. I'll finish that property value off with a semicolon, and then I'll type a space and padding. And again, I've got my colon in there to separate the property name from the property value. And this one also I will set to 0. Finish that off with a semicolon, and we'll also set the border to 0. And once again we'll finish that off with a semicolon. I'm going to press a tab and then I'm going to close my curly brackets. So this is my reset rule, if you like. I've set all the margins to 0, all the padding to 0 and all the borders to 0. I'm going to save this file, so I'll click Save All, and I'm going to switch back to my Google Chrome web page. So here it is. You can see the white space in between the individual elements and around the edge here. I've saved the file, so all I need to do now is to refresh the browser, and that will pick up on my styling. And when I click refresh, you'll see now that the white space above my logo image has gone, and also down the left here we've now got no white space here. If I scroll down, You'll see also that there's now no space above and below my headings, and my paragraphs also don't contain any space. So we've performed a reset, and now no matter what browser we open this file in, it should look very much the same. As I say, there is a lot of information out there on resets, and you can create your own CSS reset where you include individual elements for your web page and set them to a specific value. I'm going to minimize this one for a second and go back to Dreamweaver. One other thing that I want to do globally within my website is to set the font to Arial. Now if I just switch back to my source code and the code window, you can see that the content of my web page is contained within the body section of my HTML code. So this is the start, and everything in my web page is contained in this body section. So I'm going to format all the text in this body section to be Arial. So I'll switch back to my CSS file and I'll come down a couple of lines, and in here I'm going to type in the selector body. Press the tab and open curly brackets. Press tab again, and at this point I can close my curly brackets so that I don't actually forget to do that. I'll come inside of the brackets, and in here I'm going to set the font to Arial. And the way we do that is to type in font family. And again you'll see the code hints appear. I've typed in font, so I can just cursor down to font family and press enter. And Dreamweaver will partially complete this for me. Again the code hint window opens up, and I can simply cursor down to Arial and then press enter. I must always remember to finish this line of code off with a semicolon. One of the top reasons why things don't quite work right is because people forget to type that semicolon in at the end. So that may be one of the first things that you need to check if your page doesn't look the way you think it should. So I've typed in the selector or tag style for body, and I've set the font to Arial. Now I'll come across to my preview window and I'll click, and you'll see that my font has updated. So the links there have now become Arial, and if I scroll down to my text area, you can see this is all formatted in Arial as well. Let's just scroll back up and let's just notice our social media icons here. If you remember, before we did the reset they were bulleted, and the bullets are actually still there. They're just hidden off the page now, we can't see them, but they are still there. And the same goes for the links in the navigation part. So let's just now have a look at another common mistake that people make. I've made my changes and I'm going to switch back to Google Chrome so that I can see my website, and here you'll see that my text still hasn't updated to the Arial font. I'm going to click on refresh, and when I do that, nothing's happened. The font hasn't changed at all. I've made the common mistake of forgetting to save my file before I preview. We can see the little asterisks here, so my CSS has not yet been saved. You always have to save your file before you can preview it in the browser. So I'll click Save now. And now we'll switch back to Google Chrome, and this time when I refresh, you'll see that the font takes on that Arial look. Don't worry at this stage that there's no space at the left hand edge and everything looks all squashed up. We're going to be applying our own spacing in and around our elements. If you found this series of videos helpful and you want to receive updates on video tutorials as they're released, why not subscribe to my channel? And don't forget to like and share it with your friends.